Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are tackling this really fascinating piece of spiritual philosophy that basically deconstructs the whole logic of ritual worship.
It really does. We are looking at a composition by the Saint Bhagat Namdev, and this is recorded in Rag Aasaa.
Right, and it is a pretty striking text for anyone listening who is maybe familiar with traditional offerings. Because Namdev is not just offering a critique here.
No, he is actually presenting this massive logical paradox. He is challenging you to find even a single object in the world that has not already been consumed by the divine.
So our mission here is to unpack that exact paradox. The text frames it almost like a scenario where you are trying to perform a puja, like a traditional offering to an idol, which is referred to here as the ttaakur.
But at every single step, Namdev just blocks the ritual. And it is not because the offering is too small or anything, it is because it is logically impossible to actually give it.
Right, so let us look at the first scenario, which is offering water. In a standard ritual, you would bathe the idol, right? It's supposed to be this gesture of purification.
Exactly, but Namdev stops the devotee before they can even pour the pitcher.
Because of the 4.2 million species, right?
Yeah, that is the specific figure he uses. He points out that the water is already full of life forms. Now, a surface reading, you might just think, oh, the water is biologically dirty.
But Namdev is doing theology here, not biology.
Right, and this is where that term beettal becomes crucial. The text uses beettal to refer to the Lord. And the argument is not just that there are bugs in the water, it is that beettal is the actual life force animating those bugs.
Precisely. So if the divine is dwelling within the aquatic life, then the divine is essentially already bathing in that water.
So the question Namdev is posing to you is, how can you offer water to God when God is already occupying it?
It completely renders the ritual redundant. You cannot introduce God to the water because he is already there. So the text moves to the next logical offering, which is flowers.
Right, you want to weave a garland for ttaakur.
But here we run into the bumblebee problem.
It is such a beautiful image. He says the bumblebee has already sucked the fragrance from the flowers.
And in the poetic tradition, once a bee sips the nectar or even smells the fragrance, the flower is considered tasted. It is no longer pristine.
But again, this is not about hygiene. It is about presence.
Right. If beettal is in the bee,
then God has already enjoyed the fragrance. By the time you pick that flower, the divine, acting through the bee, has already beaten you to it.
You are trying to offer God something he has already consumed. It is a really relentless logic.
And the text applies this exact same pre-tasted argument to food, specifically milk.
Yes, the classic offering of kheer, or milk pudding. Namdev points to the calf at the udder.
Because the calf tastes the milk first, and since the divine resides in the calf, the milk has effectively already been offered.
This completely shifts the definition of purity. Usually in these rituals, purity means untouched by other beings.
But Namdev is saying that because God is in all beings, nothing is untouched. That is the key insight here.
We tend to operate on a dualistic model. Like, here is me, the worshiper, and over there is God, the recipient, and I need to bridge that gap with an object.
Namdev completely collapses that gap. He argues that the contamination we think we see, like the bee or the calf or the life in the water, is actually the proof of God's presence.
And he synthesizes this beautifully with the phrase, ibai beettal, upai beettal.
The Lord is here. The Lord is there. It is an assertion of total immanence. He says the Lord is continually playing in supreme bliss through these forms.
Without beettal, the world does not even exist.
So if you accept that premise, that the divine permeates every place in inner space, or than and par, what do you do with that pitcher of water?
You just put it down.
Exactly. Not out of frustration, but out of recognition. The ritual becomes unnecessary because you realize there is no separation between the offerer, the offering, and the receiver.
It moves from a transaction to a state of awareness. You are not giving to God. You are witnessing God interacting with himself.
That is really the core takeaway of this deep dive. Namdev dissolves the ego of the worshiper entirely. You cannot be the generous giver when you realize you do not actually own the flowers or the water or the milk. God is already living through them.
It is an incredibly humbling perspective. It makes you wonder, if the divine is already tasting the milk through the calf and smelling the flowers through the bee, is it possible that our role is not to give to God, but simply to recognize that God is already receiving everything through existence itself?
That is exactly the question to meditate on today.
Thanks for listening. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.